It became a 7 through 12 facility, and Perkins Middle School had some additional programming by Akron Public Schools, which will be coming to an end in 2018. So when we've looked at the site and looked at the mayor's housing strategy, we really feel like this is a very strategic location. It's right on Mall Avenue, very close to I-77. You heard earlier with our pending public hearing for the expansion of First Energy on Mall Avenue, very strategically located near that large employer, very close to shopping in the Wallhaven and Highland Square business districts, and very close to downtown. It's 10 minutes from downtown in Ward 4 in West Akron. And so when we look at the site, one thing that we see is it's nearly 11 acres. You could have up to 90 units of single-family housing. I think the city's perspective has always been we would like to see market rate single-family housing on that site. And if this development were to go forward with single-family housing, it would represent the largest new development of single-family housing in the 21st century. So as James said, along with the mayor's strategy of growing the city's population, this is a great way to do it. We've been in discussions with Alpha Phi Alpha Homes about serving as a developer for that site. I think that we've got a great partnership in the past with Alpha Phi Alpha, and I know that they really understand the community, and I'll have them, with your permission, Chairman Fusco, come up in a second here to describe the proposal in detail. Just before they do, I just wanted to add that they'll present a little bit of a vision for the site, for the Perkins Middle School. There would be additional steps. This piece of legislation is the first step at the city acquiring this from Akron Public Schools, that commitment. There would be subsequent legislation with a development agreement, planning commission, et cetera. But at this time, if they're willing, I'll ask them to come on up, and I think they have some boards and displays, and they can kind of talk through their vision, serving as the developer for the site, and I'm sure we'll all be available to answer questions after that. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Fuller. Do I give the...
How you doing, sir?
Hello, Bob. Am I give my address at this point, or? No. No, don't need to do that. We have a presentation that we will leave with you, but in the interest of time, we'd like to go straight into the talk about the site plan. This is John Williams. John also works for Alpha Phi Alpha Homes. He's the Deputy Executive Director, and I'm the Executive Director. What we see as an opportunity that will come about as a result of acquisition of Perkins Middle School. This is a site plan that shows the entire area, including Good Park, the golf course. This is the roundabout at Mull and Hawkins. And the site that we're talking about is this portion that is bounded in black dotted lines. That includes the site of the school and the athletic fields adjacent to it, two of which are currently in use in the summertime as baseball fields. The rest of the site shows you the favorable proximity to the golf course and why this is such an attractive place to build new housing. This board shows you the number of units that will be able to be placed on this site. This one. What we're proposing to do is put about 90 units on there. And these are conceptual drawings. It's not anything that is cast in stone or that will perhaps need to be amended or changed in the course of reviewing the proposal. We actually have a feasibility study that we've commissioned with Vote Strategic Insights, which will give us some more detail on what the market is and how it would play out and the time frame in which these units can be absorbed in the market. But these are lots that mirror the lots that are on Hawkins, not Hawkins, but Mole Avenue right along here. Similar in size to the Mole Avenue sites that are across the street from there. And as you get further into the development, these become smaller lots, and they will, as a result, accommodate additional housing for the total of 90. With the most obvious preferable units being located on the golf course itself. This follows a concept that is called new urbanism, and it includes some of the design concept that you will find in that type of housing that's being developed around the country. But it doesn't include all of the concepts. It doesn't include all of those design features. This is a limited use of that type of work. The other one? This drawing shows how the property could be broken down into 3 phases, with the first phase centering on the portion closest to the golf course and accessing from Hawkins Avenue, and the middle phase and the third phase being closer to Mole Avenue. This doesn't have to be how it's developed, but in the course of developing the details on this, these details will be added, and the project will come together in more detail. So this is basically what it will look like. These are the types of units that we're proposing. Single-family homes, 0 lot line, not condominium type living, but units that are on small lots that provide 1,500 to 2,000 square feet of housing. A lot of detail that has to be added to this, but this is the concept. We'll leave you with these printed materials, and any questions that you might have we can take now.
Any other comments?
No, I think we're ready to take questions.
Very good.
Well, the only thing I would add,
Yes, Mr. Hardy?
Chair, the only thing I would add is just as Director Segedy said, the legislation before you is authorizing us to enter into the cooperative agreement, which is the land swaps. We, in full transparency, wanted to talk to you and make you aware of all that we're working with and hope to achieve with Alpha. But we will be coming back to Planning Commission. We will be coming back to Planning Committee with a full-fledged development agreement. So right now is the perfect opportunity to offer feedback because we have not, to Tom's point, we have an MOU that exists between us to mutual support and try and develop an agreement. But getting that feedback now is important because we can, whenever possible, include that into the development agreement itself. That's the only thing I wanted to.
Thank you. Thank you. This is certainly an interesting and a dynamic proposal for both downtown as well as West Akron. There's a lot here. And
It implies is it's going back to the way that cities used to be built. So, you know, at the last 50 years in most of the United States, not so much in the city of Akron, but definitely in our suburbs, lots have gotten larger. You end up having to drive to everything. Homes are built over here, stores are built over here, jobs are placed over there. And the idea, and I think that's why this site at Perkins is very well suited, is, you know, new urbanism, there really are two things you've got to do. One, you've got to have the site itself be built in kind of a traditional manner where homes are closer together. A lot of people are looking for that, a lot of millennials, as well as baby boomers who are looking toward retirement. There's interest in having smaller yards, smaller lots that are easy to take care of. I should add, these houses and lots are going to look a lot like a lot of houses in older parts of the city. You know, they're not...
Could you name some of those? Just
Yeah, I mean, just a lot of, you know, Highland Square, a lot of the houses are on 40-foot lots with maybe 100-foot back off of the street frontage, and the houses are fairly close together. So although this is kind of a new concept in modern day building, it's the way that we built neighborhoods and cities up until after World War II. The other thing I would say about new urbanism is it's not just the site, but it's the context of the site. So are there things to walk to? Are there jobs nearby? Are there stores or shops? And I think that's another great advantage of this location, that you know, there are things, Wallhaven is a reasonable walk from here. Even more importantly, you know, even if you're in a position to drive to something, it's much closer developing here in the city. And the two most recent, you know, big new building of single-family homes we had in the city were in the last century, and that was Coventry Crossing in High Hampton. And I think what's great about this location is this is more in the core of the city, closer to shopping and things like that. So that's kind of what we mean by new urbanism.
Very good. Okay. Ms. Mobian?
Well, I certainly appreciate you anticipating a lot of the questions that I have, because I certainly had some other proposals, but now that I see this, I think I'll just squash what I was thinking. No, this is great. I mean, particularly when we think about what are we doing for our neighborhoods, as we often ask, and to do all this land swapping and to create all these opportunities for folks to come downtown and take care of all these restaurants and all this other business that we have downtown. And then to see the opportunity to develop that whole parcel into new housing, because it looks like you're talking about not only single, are these all single family, or some of them will be townhouses, or just all single family? No, I like the concept. It makes a lot of sense. This is certainly what I see when I go to other places in terms of what they are doing to develop neighborhoods. And you've incorporated this fraternity that I think I know a little bit about into the project. And we know the quality of the work that you guys have done over on Barges and all over that area. So, and we know how well you take care of your properties. So, no, I really like this. It has a lot of positives. Let me ask you this, then what are we going to do with the land that United Way is currently on? Are they planning to, what are they going to do with that?
My understanding is they intend to sell their building to, you know, for another commercial use.
Okay.
But if I may, Councilwoman, I want to speak to the know-how, the knowledge, and the track record that Alpha Phi Alpha Homes brings to this project. Certainly, we will have other projects in the city that we're working to do to get at housing. But we, being that this was the biggest in a long time, it's our, I don't want to say our first foray, but one of the first under the tax abatement. We wanted to make sure we had a partner that understood community, understood how to develop within an existing neighborhood, and already had a long and existing track record of excellence as partners with the city, and you can't ask for anything better than Alpha Phi Alpha Homes. So I just want to reiterate that the mayor, planning department, myself and others are thrilled to be working with an organization that has long roots in Akron, to your point, has done great work, not only to develop but then maintain, but also understands the importance of community development that goes along with anything that they do. So we're keeping it local and keeping the roots here in Akron.
How many parking spaces do we have at Market and Main, at the Summa Care building?
How many parking spaces? I'd have to get back to you.
Would that be enough for all the employees they plan to put?
Oh, and then
in the
some,
building?
and then some, I'm sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that you seem to be building on the existing strengths of that neighborhood. You mentioned the proximity to the highway, but also the golf course right there. And I love this Alpha's community commitment to work with the local baseball league, the West Akron Baseball League, to market to Akron residents and potential first-time buyers. This is terrific. This is building on what we already have and strengthening that. And I appreciate all the work that's going into this and the direction and sentiment that's behind it.
Mr. Neal?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just want to share my appreciation for everyone that's involved with this project. Of course, it's exciting for Ward 4, and that, as Mr. Segedy knows, there's been a lot of conversation about what's going to happen there. So now, folks we know what's going to happen, and we can work around that. Parties are going to be able to work with some of the groups that have an interest. So it's going to be an exciting time for everybody involved. So again, I just want to share my appreciation for everyone that's involved in with the project. So thank you.
Oh, I guess I took over. When he's not here, are there other questions, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have two questions. Maybe the gentleman can help me out. Are these going to be built on slabs, or will they have basements?
You may know that we built the landings at Canal Park and the townhomes at Canal Park, and some of those have basements and some are on slab. Part of it depended upon the soil conditions, and we still have to do the soil testing to determine if basements are feasible or not. But you know, that is part, and it'll also be part of the market study that we'll do, just how important basements are to homeowners. And we know that where it's possible and where it's affordable, people want basements, but it's not always possible.
And just one more question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
The utilities, are they going to be above ground or underground?
We haven't reached that, but I would imagine that this would be underground.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hope?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had something in Ward 6 at Cedar Creek. It's an association. I was wondering if will these be public streets, or will it be private, like an association, and taken care of by that, or will they be maintained and taken care of, through the city services?
So we are, that is something that will be worked out in the development agreement, but I can tell you from the city side, we intend for these to be public. But we also want to work with our partner, see what the market assessment has. But I can say, I can speak for the mayor that at least our starting position is that they're going to be public.
Yeah, okay. I was just wondering, because I know in Cedar Creek and when they put that in, as far as they referred to them as cluster homes because of the lot size and how close they are together and everything. And with the association, they pay a monthly fee, and they have their own trash pickup. Their streets are maintained, cleared and everything else. And the lawns and all the maintenance on the outside is taken care of by the association. So I was just wondering if that was something that was, maybe being looked at. And that way everything stays pretty congruent and well taken care of in that manner. So, okay. Just some of those thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hope. Just let council members know who aren't on the committee, we're making extra copies. Ms. Nish had mentioned that for everyone that's going to be in their boxes shortly. Sims?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we're just talking about the agreement. This is just a piece of legislation about the agreement, correct?
Yeah, the piece of legislation is for the cooperative agreement only, so that's just the land swap.
Okay, so in essence, we got 11 acres from Perkins plus Crosby
Yes, ma'am.
for the parking lot downtown. What is the parking lot downtown kind of valued at? I mean, I know we didn't know how many spaces we had.
So I don't know it off the top of my head. We have our own evaluation that we had assessed, or excuse me, appraised. Akron Public Schools appraised their land, and that our teams came together both in planning and then in Akron Public Schools to identify as close to an even swap as possible. I would, for the interest of the committee, Ohio Revised Code actually states that it be mutually beneficial to both parties. It actually never even talks about exact valuation being a necessity, but we have always tried to achieve that wherever, excuse me, wherever possible. So the difference between incredibly valuable downtown parking and land versus the acreage, I know, is different, but the valuations ended up coming out roughly the same with the two parcels that Akron Public's giving and the parcel that we're giving for the parking through, again, independent appraisals.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just to let the committee know, as well as council members know, as well, as I mentioned early on, this is, we can all recognize this is somewhat complex. It's a dynamite proposal, and we appreciate the effort that went into it. But I think for council just to take a week so we can digest this and come forward with questions. But Ms. Samples, you had a comment or question?
Can you get me the information? Thank you, Councilman Fusco. Can you send us the information on your MBE participation prior to us voting on this, and as well as your commitment to Akron contractors? If you could get some information to me, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
The only thing I would stress, again, is that this is just on the land swap. We would be coming back with a formal development agreement with Alpha, which would then be the decision point on moving forward with
In
Alpha.
all likelihood, on the other parcels as well, to a certain extent.
Yes.
At least for the,
Yes.
yeah, very good. Ms. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 3 questions. So, hi, Tom. My first one is, what will the value of the homes be? What is the range?
We're looking at 175 to 200,000.
Okay. And my next question would be, gosh, I hope I didn't lose that question. We have had numerous problems in that area with water, with issues with homes, okay, in that area. Are we taking, obviously we're going to take it into account, no, we're going to forget that, but I mean, that has been a reoccurring issue in that particular area. So what are we going to do to help, because this may not add, they may not have problems with it when you go check the soil and everything, you may be fine, but it may transcend to throw more issues the other way. Has that been looked at all?
I can tell you at this stage, we haven't looked at it yet, but it's definitely something, it's an excellent point. We'll make sure we do it as part of our due diligence and report back on how we want to address that. If there's an issue on the site, but then also if by some way we can assist in any other issues by doing the development, we'll take a look at it, but we're not there yet in terms of our due diligence on the details of the site plan.
And then last is, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. I know that those fields are used often, and I'm going to imagine that we are working with those group of people to try to address what'll work. I mean, it seems like an awful lot of homes to put in one area, but I mean, more power to us, I guess, if that can happen. But the little guy that has used that area, are we working with them to facilitate transfer?
As a proud Wobble alum and as a coach, I can tell you that we're going to do everything we can to work with Wobble. There's meetings set that planning is going to be hosting. Alpha has made a commitment to to do what it can as part of the project. Now, I will say, for the purposes of financial stewardship, we have 97 baseball fields in the city of Akron, and many of them don't get used. But I understand that Wabble, and we recognize that Wabble definitely uses their fields. So we're working with that. I think we actually have something in the capital budget even that contemplates an additional field over at Forest Lodge.
We do.
That we would work with Alpha on. So they use 2 of the 3 now. We've already contemplated how we might be able to help with 1, and through our partnership, we're going to be meeting with Wabble to see cases coming online, which was down for a couple of years, so there may be some things we can do within existing fields, but we want to work with them, and so yes, would be the answer to your
I
question.
appreciate that attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very good. If everyone's questions are answered at this point, again, I'd like to ask the committee for time, at least 1 week, to study this particular item. It obviously meets the goals and objectives of a number of entities within this particular piece of legislation, but just like to give everyone an opportunity to look it over, study it. Point your questions toward Mr. Segedy or Mr. Hardy, should you have any reference to this. And what we'll do is we'll study it this week, and then next week further discussion. And I'd like to see perhaps the committee make a recommendation to council for next week, if possible, or short of that, that's going to be the recommendation. Is there a recommendation for
Motion for time.
this item? Time?
Motion for
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Guys have anything else to come before the committee? Very good. Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.
We got number 9, Mr. Chairman.
Silly me.
No, excuse me,
I
9A.
apologize, there's one more. That was such an exciting proposal that we forgot about the newer piece that just came in late this afternoon, which is 9A. I'll read that in. Okay. 9A, authorizing, this is kind of important. Authorizing the acceptance of property by donation at 800 George Washington Boulevard for Rubber Bowl Development purposes. Yes, sir, Mr. Westcott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. This is a request to acquire a property from Summit County Land Realization Corporation that will be known as the Rubber Bowl. It is 299,000 square feet of property, so we request your approval to do so. I'm ready for any questions.
Very good. Questions or comments, Ms. Mobian?
This is actually the Rubber Bowl itself?
That's correct.
Why do we want this headache?
Excuse me?
Why do we want this headache?
I believe we made a commitment to acquire this property, so I think it has some...
That means we have to demolish it and all of that as well?
Yes.
We do have a request in the state capital budget for funding to help demolish it, and we're pursuing a couple other sources. So we're definitely trying to minimize the impact on the city's finances.
So how much are we talking about?
The initial estimate is about $400,000. But sorry. Yeah, we haven't, again, we're looking at all the sources but right now the initial cost is about $400,000.
So if we were to find a private investor who is interested in this, or if they could, who owns it now?
Summit County Land Realization Corporation, the land bank.
Why don't the land bank keep their headaches? I mean, we give them land, but why do we want to acquire this from them?
Well,
I don't understand it personally.
Sure.
$400,000 to demolish?
Again, that's the estimate. That's correct.
So it could be more, or it could be less?
That's correct. But the other part of it, there might be a number of sources that we're basically trying to find to basically demolish this property. So it may not be all $400,000 from the city of Akron.
Well, I don't understand the charter of the land bank, but is it possible for them to get some partners to address this without us getting involved?
It's possible, but again, I think our commitment was to acquire it. So again, that could be a possibility.
Now, when did we make this commitment? Was I here when we made it? I'm just curious. Are we really firmly committed to doing this?
To acquire the property?
Yes. We don't own it at this point. Is that correct?
Excuse me?
Mr. Segedy is trying to...
Oh, I was just gonna, yeah, we don't own it, so this legislation would be to acquire it from the land bank. I think typically the way the land bank has operated has been the demolition of residential properties, and because this is a larger commercial property, I think we're still going through a partnership with the land bank, but I think to address your question of the interest of the city, I think the interest of the city is definitely that for good or for bad, this property is a tremendous eyesore for that area. It's detracting, I think, it's probably fair to say, from the image of the entire city. At this point, right by the airport, the soapbox derby. So I think our administration feels it is important that we be proactive, and as stated before, we're working hard to ensure that the cost to the city to demolish it is as small as possible.
Okay, I just have some concerns about us acquiring something when we have such a tight budget ourselves. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I was just, I mean, I understand my colleague's concern, but I just remember what folks say. There's one thing that they're not going to make more of, and that's land. So anytime you can have a controlling interest of any type of land, it's important. I did have a problem with the purchase price, though. I think it's a little bit exorbitant. That was a joke.
I was going to ask what you looked at.
Pin drop.
I mean, I wish we could get everything for $0.
Right.
But, I mean, I was out there at the Soapbox Derby, and when I was out there at the Soapbox Derby, I think there was a ball game going on. There were some kids riding some motocross bikes. Of course, the Soapbox Derby was going on, and my imagination was just going wild as the potential of that site. I don't know if any of you watch any of the extreme sports or the American Ninja stuff. That is a growing phenomenon as far as opportunity to bring in revenue. Not saying that's what this would be for, but in Akron, we're fortunate to have two large land masses that usually don't come around. And so all I ask is that with this opportunity, if you go online, you'll see a lot of our constituents just brainstorming about the potential of a Rolling Acres site, of a site like this, and of the Rubber Bowl. Because these opportunities to have this kind of land mass doesn't come along that often. So I thoroughly understand my colleague's concern, but to have controlling interest on what goes there, I think is phenomenal. Now it's just up to us to use our collective genius to look at all the potential and possibilities that can happen. But, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Neal. Is there any further questions or comments at this time? Mr. Hope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking for the residents of Ward 6 and the condition that the Rubber Bowl is in, I'm very happy to see that we're acquiring this and moving in a direction that's going to make it look better. We did pretty much the same thing with Rolling Acres Mall, and spent that amount of money, if not more, on tearing that down, and that'll be for future use. Right now, the city of Akron owns pretty much every piece of property that adjoins to the Rubber Bowl. I'm not sure if there's where that house is back there, if the University of Akron still maintains that, or if that.
Yeah, there's one piece that's abutting that University of Akron does own.
Okay, yeah, I think that's probably that piece should come back to us also. We own all the property that butts to it, so it makes sense for us to own that part of it too. I believe that we own the property that the Soapbox Derby is on, and they have a use agreement for that property. So, and we own the airport. So there's a lot of sense in acquiring this and getting it taken care of. It's been a long time coming. There's been a lot of mixed emotions and pros and cons about it, and I think it's a very good piece of legislature. And if I could, I'd like to have my name added to it, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Hope. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. If you could please note that Mr. Hope is a co-sponsor of this particular piece. Samples?
Thank you. I have a problem with this demo and the city spending money. We have a property on Morgan Street that predated even me coming on the council that's been an eyesore for those residents over there for years. Bricks falling on the street, sits next to a City of Akron park. And I think those residents over there deserve better as well. So I hope that we can be as intentional with trying to get that property down, which has been an eyesore for years for those residents, and they come down here a lot to complain about it, but yet it still stands, and it's standing next to a City of Akron park where kids play. So I hope that we are just as intentional with getting that property down as we are with the rubber bowl and finding funding for that. If we're strapped for cash, we're strapped for cash, but we're finding it to tear the rubber bowl down. So we need to be just as intentional with properties that are sitting in the middle of residential areas as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mr. Neal?
I do, again, I understand my colleagues' concerns too. I do want to make sure, this right here is just for acquisition. This isn't for tear down too, though, is it?
Correct. This is for acquisition.
So we can take into consideration the other concerns that have been addressed? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind council, I don't have it with me, but I believe this is in the 2018 capital budget. I was looking for Helen Tomick. She must have. It is.
I believe that's
in fact,
correct.
in the 2018 budget. Within that, and I believe the ask, I don't have it in front of me, but it's for $200,000 or $100,000 from the state of Ohio to help $200,000 to help supplement the cost of this particular item. So it's going to, require some city funds perhaps, but given the fact that, and I think we can recognize all over the city of Akron, we have challenging properties as a result of the recession of '08 and '07. But this particular one here, I think there's a concern also in terms of the safety factor, as well as all those people from literally all over the world that come to Akron for the Soapbox Derby, and have to see that particular location. Ms. Nish?
Yeah, just to elaborate on the funding sources, so we've requested $200,000 from the state and capital grant dollars to demolish, additionally $100,000 from the land bank, which they've agreed to put in. So our cost would be $100,000, and land bank would also match that with $100,000, to your point, as far as them having some participation in this. Yeah.
Very good. This has been Ms. Amobia?
Yes. I think everything you said would apply to this property as well. Let me ask you this. Can someone provide us with a listing of those commercial facilities that we've acquired or that are sitting vacant, that are in neighborhoods as Councilwoman Samples has described? Because just as we found money to demolish, because the property, it appears that we're getting that free of charge. They're donating that to us. And we've already gotten, what, $300,000 through the state and whatever else to demolish it. And, and when you talk about safety and ISO and all of that, I mean, what else can you talk about this if it's next to a park? Can someone give us a listing of all of the facilities that we own in the city of Akron, commercial properties that are sitting vacant, so that we can look at the list and prioritize how we get rid of these eyesores in neighborhoods?
Yes, sure. We can give you a list of all the commercial properties that the city of Akron owns. We can do that, yes.
And if someone can prioritize, how do we go about looking for funds, because obviously we requested funds from the state or somewhere to demolish this rubber bowl mess that we have over here, so we can start doing the same thing with other eyesores in other parts of the city. Because I understand this, the soapbox derby and all of that, and that's important to the city and important to other entities, but this is also important to the citizens of Akron. And, Ward 5, we can always talk about the treatment that we provide one ward versus another, but I think it's important for us to look at these eyesores and try to prioritize how do we go after money. because it appears that we look for money when we want to. So could someone provide that to us?
Yeah, as Mr. Westcott indicated, we're happy to provide that list. And I think it is fair to say we're constantly working on prioritizing those properties. The difficult thing for the city of Akron, like a lot of cities in our part of the country, is there are a lot of these sites, but we're happy to provide that list and to work with council on identifying these and moving forward. There are a lot of needs in the community.
And can we make those a part of our capital investment budget in terms of either attaching it to it every year so that we know that these properties are out there, and then we talk about the ones that we want to include in the capital investment budget? You know, whether we know about them or not, I think we mostly know about them when you bring them to our attention. But if you keep them attached to that budget, at least we know they're out there. We can start asking, are there ways in which we can look for dollars for this building or that building and do so many of these a year or something? Because, it appears that we can find money where we want to. Thank you.
And just to add one thing there are, when a property is a former industrial site, that is where the cost to the city is often much higher, because it's not simply the cost of demolition, but all of the environmental cleanup. So that's where we can work with Clean Ohio and other sources of funding to help us with that.
And the EPA would give us dollars for those too, right?
Possibly under some of the brownfield grants.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Swirsky?
Yeah, I agree that the rubber mold needs to go down. It needs to be cleaned up there. All of us can point to something in our ward that we'd like to see cleaned up and taken care of by the city, but that doesn't mean we can't go after this site. And the money is being shared. Some of the costs is being shared by others. I appreciate that, and I'd make a motion that we approve this.
Is there? There's a motion. I believe we have to deal with the motion first. There's
A motion that we approve this.
For suspension of rules?
For suspension of rules.
Okay.
It needs to be done that quickly? Is that what we are?
That's a motion for suspension of the rules of the favorable report, I assume. There's a second on that.
Is there a second?
Yes, Mr.
Who's
Kramer
second?
made the
Can we
second.
have discussion
Mr.
now?
Kramer? Okay.
It's been moved and seconded. Can we have discussion?
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I want
Mr.
to ask you a
Mobian.
question. Was that the intent of this when you brought it to us, to move it today, to pass it today? I mean, is there an urgent reason why we need to? I can't hear you, sir.
Sorry. That's fine. If we can prove it today, that is fine.
But do you need it today?
It's up to you, but we don't need it today, but as you've already approved it for suspension of rules, we're fine with that.
Any comments? Mr. Neal?
Just taking into consideration all that was said, and hearing that, right now, the understanding is we're just securing the property.
Right. This is to receive title.
If it comes for demo, when it comes for demo, will another piece of legislation come before us? Will another piece of legislation need to come before us?
Forget the funding.
No, I don't believe the demolition will be coming to us, coming to this body for the permission for demolition.
Okay, because if I can just brainstorm and think out loud, this is almost like the cell tower type deal. In real estate, you always make your money at the beginning at the deal. Looking at this, one of the creative things, one question was asked, okay, if the city's putting up $100,000, can't we put into the agreement with the developer, almost like we would with if a property was delinquent on property tax, where whoever acquires that property, you assume whatever liens or debts are against it, meaning as a part of this, we recoup that $100,000. If we don't develop ourselves, whatever developer we work with, we recoup that $100,000, and then we make a commitment that we're going to use that to address some of our neighborhood needs that aren't directly, connected to these favorable sites. Is that something that we can, just like Mr. Mobian was saying, we need to, just to keep it before us, because so much information comes before us, we can lose sight of what we want to keep track track of. Can we, put in the notes, in the minutes, some kind of way to remind ourselves, a way of recouping dollars, the dollars that the city is putting in? If it comes out to be $100,000, will we recoup that money by making it a part of whatever agreement with whoever assumes this, and then we could take that money to address neighborhood needs? But if we don't think about it in the beginning while we're structuring this, we're going to get lost in just our general business and lose an opportunity to recoup these dollars. Is that?
We'll work hard to recoup dollars. I think right now, though, the immediate need for the city is to acquire and have site control and see the structure be brought down. But I think what you're raising is, as we go forward with redevelopment plans, anything we can do to recoup money over and above what we stated before about trying to find as many outside sources to fund the demolition as possible, we would do that.
And I understand that, and I agree with the importance of securing it. That's why I asked, is the demo going to come back before us? Because if the demo doesn't come back before us, the only opportunity we have to have input on this project is now. And that's why I say it's important that, we make note that it's our intent to recoup the city's investment in this so that we can have those dollars to come back and do some of the neighborhood concerns that were addressed. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
I also had Mr. Hope ask.
Sure.
Mr. Hope?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody that years ago, we owned the River Bowl, and it was our property. We sold it for $1, and now we're getting it back for nothing. So we made $1 on it. So, I think we can go ahead and take care of this, get it taken care of. I think it's something that is necessary for the city and for the community, and I know that there's a lot of other things that need to be taken care of and a lot of other things that need to be done, but a step at a time. We can't take this and tie it into all the other problems or anything else that the city's having and has other problems somewhere else. This is something that we're taking care of now. So let's take our $1 and go ahead and get this done. Thank you.
Samovian?
I want to make sure we are looking at least I want to look at, what is the legislation asking us to do? I think it's asking us to acquire this, right? It doesn't talk about the demolition part unless I'm missing something.
That is correct. It asks for the acquisition of the property through the donation.
So we can acquire today, and the second step would be for you to come back and ask us to spend city funds to demolish it. I think that's what this is asking us to do. To accept a free donation of land, I mean, as much of an eyesore it is and a headache, this is all this legislation is asking us to do. Am I correct?
It is asking council for the acquisition of the property. So,
yes. And if you're going to spend money demolishing it, then it makes sense to me that you then come back to us to tell us how much it's going to cost and how much of city funds we are spending. I recognize that we have acquired or we have been promised some state dollars, but that doesn't cover the entire cost.
and again, that's probably something that you probably have the ability to say. If that's a requirement, then that's something that you may do so.
Well, Mr. Swirsky has moved that, and it's been seconded, I think, by Mr. Donnie Kamer. So if we want to pass this, that's all we are passing today. Okay. If that's all we're passing today.
Oh, it says.
And I want to make sure that it's on the record that you're coming back to us with the cost of demolition and the cost of that demolition.
I don't believe that would be the case.
Why not?
Because this is an emergency situation in terms of the condition. As a matter of fact, we had one of the Derby participants, from what I understand, there was part of the facility came down and disrupted a race recently. So it is somewhat of an emergency in terms of the condition of this particular facility. So whenever there is a situation like that, the city can, in fact,
Well, tell me where
try
the
to eradicate.
legislation is saying that, sir.
I'm sorry?
Tell me where in this legislation it states that. It just talks about the acquisition of property. That's all I see.
That's, in fact, that's what this is, acquiring the property.
And
You're
that's
in the
what we-
right.
and that's what
However,
we-
if there is a situation that is deemed an emergency, the city of Akron has that ability to go in and eradicate that emergency situation. We've done that oftentimes with buildings downtown, whereas the facade would be falling onto the walk. We've done that in the past. If there's an emergency situation, the city does have the ability to go forward with that. Mr. Becker?
Yes, basically, this structure has been condemned already by the city. We've had a contractor out there who's priced it for demo. Because of the
How much
piece,
is it? How much is demo?
the demolition is about $400,000. What we are going to do immediately is tear down the section right next to the Derby because of the fallen concrete. One of them almost hit one of the Derby cars. The girl, she almost got hit in the head. There was an article in the paper, it was last fall. So we need to immediately take down that section.
Why don't you amend this before we pass it tonight, then?
I'm sorry, what?
Why won't this legislation be amended to include that?
To amend for the demolition?
Well, this
Yeah,
is
I mean-
just to get the piece of property from the land bank right now.
Yeah, but then you're talking about doing additional work that you've already,
When we condemn a structure, we've had many that are condemned that are on the city, and if it's an emergency,
right.
we can generally just go to Board of Control because we have to tear the structure down immediately.
But this doesn't talk about condemnation.
No, it
It
doesn't.
just strictly talks about acquiring land
Right.
that we consider to be an eyesore. Can you amend this to reflect what you're talking about doing?
Can we amend the legislation to add the emergency demolition to it?
Yeah, I mean, if that's
And to reflect
requested
the amount of money that
and
you
that's
wanna
the
spend.
will of the committee to make that change, we can make that change. So it's, as always, it's up to council to decide how they'd like to proceed.
Because right now, the motion is to accept this only.
Correct,
if
and that's
would
what you guys are
accept a
debating,
friendly
so.
amendment to include the cost of the demolition, that'd be fine with me.
Okay, we could probably do that. Well, let's, we're going to have that written up by our law department, that the cost of demolition be included, but it's also going to have to identify the funding sources, perhaps the 200 from the state grant, $100,000 from the city, and $100,000 from the land utilization board.
That's reflected in the
So
capital
we'll have to do that. What I can do is I can pull the committee tonight, I suppose. But we're going to have to, subject to we could pass it subject to an amendment.
Would you guys like to vote on whether or not you'd like to have that amendment added?
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Yeah.
We could vote, and you'd have to withdraw your proposal.
I'll withdraw my proposal.
And then
Okay.
And accept a
then-
friendly amendment.
Yeah, subject to an amendment.
Yes.
So it'd be, so that the proposal from Mr. Swirsky would be favorable, subject to an amendment to identify the funding sources for demolition.
Okay.
Right? Okay. That's your amendment, right? Okay. Okay, that's it. Is there a second? Okay, very good. All those in favor of the legislation subject to an amendment signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Very good. The ayes have it.
Well, let's do a roll call.
Roll call, please.
Fusco.
Yes.
Movian.
Yes.
Kamer. Neal. Swirsky.
Yes.
Okay, passes 4-1.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir.
We'll make that change.
Anything else to come before the committee? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.
That was the weakest piece of legislation I'd ever seen. Huh? We're way behind in committees. The next committee's yeah, they'll say right there. I don't think you do. Here's your minute. I know, but everybody asked for them. Hamer, Musco, Hope, Sample.
Yeah, but take.
Whenever you're ready, Madam Chair.
I'd like to call the Public Service Committee to order now. Hi, guys. Good to see you here. And I believe we are all here. Wait, let me check. I think I might be missing someone.
Okay. It's in the old one.
Oh, okay, here she is. I didn't see you. Okay. You're missing. Glad you're all here. Okay, I would like approval on the minutes, please, from our last meeting. Okay, so I have a motion for approval and a second here.
Okay.
All righty, and there's no old items on our agenda, so we will move right into our new piece that we have here. And this is an ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent without publicly advertising for bids to enter into a contract with ProMats Athletics for the purchase and installation of netting at Canal Park Stadium and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Chairwoman, this ordinance would allow us to purchase netting for the Canal Park Baseball Stadium. The Major League Baseball has asked us to extend those down the lines a little bit to protect the spectators, and that's what this would do. They'd like to get it installed obviously before the first game.
Yeah, and I noted that it takes about 8 weeks, I noticed in our legislation for this to get moving, so thank you for bringing it forward. And this isn't on a whim, this is just regulations that have changed that are requiring this, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, are there any questions from the committee? None? Okay. I believe they're going to need suspension of the rules with a favorable report because of the time variance here. So could I have a motion for suspension of the rules? Okay, thank you. I have and I have a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that passes. So good. We'll be ready for opening day. And then, is there anything else to come before the committee? Okay, seeing none, we will close this meeting.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and move right into public safety since we're behind, please. All members are present. Mr. Swirsky, hopefully he's still here. Thank you, yes. We do have one new piece in front of us today. Can I get approval of the minutes we had from last week's meeting, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, anybody opposed? Okay, thanks. The new ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent without the formality of advertising for bids to purchase 20 sets of protective fire gear in addition to the 50 previously authorized by ordinance 110/2017 and declare an emergency. We have Deputy Mayor of Public Safety Chief Charlie Brown, sorry.
Thank you, sir. District Chief Coutts going to talk about this.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good afternoon. First of all, I'll say that we are thrilled and looking forward to bringing on 20 new members into the fire service in February of this year, and that led into this request for legislation. We are respectfully requesting an amendment to previous legislation so we can purchase 20 additional sets of new fire protective gear for the new class of 20 rookies that will be coming on February 20th of this year. Purpose of this request is to get the gear in a timely fashion. This will allow the new recruits to use the gear as much as possible prior to graduating and having to use it in an actual emergency. Back in September, we went through the bid process for the 50 sets. We were very pleased with how that turned out, and we are looking forward to getting those new 50 sets. So this legislation will allow us to use the same manufacturer and will allow us to get the gear within 5 to 6 weeks, which will put us at just the beginning of the training academy. At this point, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, District Chief. Any questions from committee members? Mrs. Keith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will we get them at the same cost? I know we ordered 50, so that there's a value in ordering that many at one time. Will we get that same?
Yes, absolutely. The manufacturer has guaranteed, and I do have the quote, that they honored the same price that was awarded when the bid went out in September of 2017.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Mrs. Keith. Good question. Any other questions? Mrs. Sims, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How you doing? So on the budget review last Monday, there was some new safety equipment. I think the garments were in there too. Is this the same, or are these additional ones?
In the budget hearing last week, was brought up for the second set of gear that will be purchased soon in the early part of this year. That'll be a purchase of about 275 sets to get every firefighter a second set of gear. This is separate from that. This is not part of the issue 4. This has been worked into our 2018 operating budget, and this will be separate just for the 20 new recruits.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sims. Any other questions, committee members?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to have my name added, please.
Okay, sure, Mr. Keith.
Okay, I got it.
Any other questions, comments, council members? With that, what's your pleasure?
I'd like to suspend the rules due to we came to this for the timeliness of it to get it as soon as possible, so I'd request a suspension.
Motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Seconds from Mrs. Sims. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you two for coming down, and we'll suspend the rules on that, pass it this evening, and we're adjourned. Thank you.
I'd like to call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order. We have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
Rules. Oh, rules.
Okay. I tell you what, let me withdraw that and we'll let rules meet before we meet. How's that work?
Just read the schedule already.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
What's it with these councilmen? You act like you're in a hurry.
Thank you. I'd like to call the Rules Committee to order. And we are just missing, as you know, we have Mr. Freeman here, but we are missing Mrs. Amobi, and I'm sure she'll be here. There she is. Okay, so all are present. Okay. And may I have a motion on the minutes from our last meeting, please? All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, they pass. And let me check and see if we have anything. We do have, on our old agenda, we have one piece, the resolution. So, the resolution was recognizing and honoring the history and culture of Native Americans and the contributions by tribal nations to the development of the American continent, and acknowledging the efforts to preserve this history in our country in Akron, Summit County, and Ohio by establishing, and I believe the name has been amended.
Do you want me to read the substitute in?
If you would, that would be better. So I'm going to stop right now and ask the clerk to read in the substitute.
It's a resolution recognizing and honoring the history and culture of the Native Americans and the contributions by tribal nations to the development of the American continent, and acknowledging the efforts to preserve this history in our country in Akron, Summit County, Ohio, by establishing North American First Peoples Day on the first Monday of October and declaring emergency.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. Okay, we have had the resolution read in. There was a week's time, if you had questions or concerns, that you were able to address those to the committee, to myself, or to the students of Lipman, which have been very active in engaging us with their emails as to how we felt about this piece. So is there anyone on the committee that would like to make a comment or have any concerns with this piece as it stands right now? Okay. Are there any other council members that have questions or concerns? Councilman Swirsky.
Turn your microphone on, sir. Mr. Swirsky.
Turn your mic.
Turn your microphone on.
The light doesn't work, so I can never tell. She would like to address the committee. She didn't have an opportunity last week. LaDonna Blue Eye.
Okay.
Just make a brief statement. Would that be possible?
I don't have any problem with that. So if you would like to address the committee, that is fine. I would like you to make sure the mic's on, and then please state your first name, last name, and your address for us. Okay. And you will have 3 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is LaDonna Blue Eye at 140 Mayfield Avenue right here in Akron. Thank you for allowing me time to address the Akron City Council Rules Committee this afternoon to speak in favor of designating Native American First Peoples Day on the first Monday in October. I'm a member of the Portage Path Collaborative. I'm a resident of Ward 1, and I am an enrolled member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Also, like many African Americans who are part Native, I am a Native American who is part African American, which is very common in our two communities. Therefore, I feel that I'm in a unique position to speak to this resolution. The resolution honors our past and contributions made by Native Americans. The history was covered very well last week. I'd like to share a little bit of my story and where we are today with Native Americans. My mother was born in Oklahoma and spoke only our native Choctaw language until she was 5 years old. She was forcibly removed from her home, taken to a government boarding school to become assimilated into the dominant culture. She learned English as a second language right here in the United States. Ironically, at the same time that my mother's language was being beaten out of her, our Navajo code talkers used our language in favor to benefit our country during World War II. Now might also be a good time to bring up the fact that more Native Americans per capita serve in the military than any other racial group, and this has been true historically. I followed in the footsteps of those ancestors, and I served in active duty in this 82nd Airborne Division as a paratrooper 30 years and 40 pounds ago. I'm proud of that long heritage that we have. I'd also like to point out Native Americans are the very last group of people in the United States to gain citizenship. That did not occur until 1945. We didn't get voting rights until 1965. And until President Jimmy Carter signed the American Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978, we did not even have freedom of religion right here. So I did not get freedom of religion until I was 14 years old. My parents were in their 40s, my grandmother in her 60s. So this resolution before the committee creating the North American First Peoples Day on the first Monday of October is important to recognize the historical contributions as well as the continuing contributions made by residents here in Akron. And I thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you so very much. Wow, riveting. Is there anyone else? Question or concern? Okay, is there a motion? Mr. Swirsky?
Just a real quick comment. Mr. Hoek and I were talking earlier today, so he deserves credit for some of this, but I want to talk directly to the students and thank you for your initiative, patience, and your perseverance waiting on this. But I want to tell you that I know that I'm going to call you out. You will become future leaders in our community. You will build on this small step and this small experience for larger steps and greater accomplishments. And I hope you remember this your whole life, and I hope it helps set a direction and a compass for you where you do things that benefit our community. And just finally, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swirsky. Anyone? Councilwoman Omobian.
You know, I too would like to recognize the students, but certainly I'd like to recognize our fellow council member. I think Mr. Russell Neal brought a piece before us that started us thinking about doing something like this for the indigenous people or the Native Americans in this nation. So I really like the fact that he gave us some impetus to look at this, and I certainly like what the students have done and what Lippman School has done as well. So with that, I certainly would like to, again, thank them for all their hard work, and certainly thank our fellow councilman for his impetus as well. And with that, I certainly am in favor. I don't know if you have a motion or not yet.
I think we're working on that, so thank you.
I would move it if you want, but and then we can have a second, we can have further discussion.
Do we have a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report?
So moved.
Okay, so moved, and would you second that? Sure. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing and hearing none, it passes out of committee. Is there anything else to come before this committee at this time? Seeing none, the committee is closed over at 3:12.
Just let me make sure there's nothing else. I'd like to call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order. For the record, we do have all members present. And do I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting? I have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. We have one item, I believe, that's come before us here today. Let me find that.
You want a piece of paper with it written on it?
This is, I have it here. Thank you. This is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for and to enter into an agreement with the State of Ohio Department of Education for after-school program grants for the 2018-19 school year and declaring an emergency. My first question was, we do this because, you said we are the fiscal agent. So that's why we do this as opposed to the
Yes,
school board.
we are. Akron Public Schools, we work in partnership with them. They cannot apply for the grants directly, so the city applies for them. Most of the money is a pass-through straight to the schools, and they run the programs.
Okay, very good. Any other comments or questions? Let me go to Ms. Amobian, please.
This is a program that Bolden oversees?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it's the same one. Thank you.
Sims?
So I know we do this all the time, but how much is the grant for? It wasn't in there.
It's not in there because we don't know till they're actually awarded. We have one grant that's in its final year. No, we have one grant that's in its fourth year. When they're awarded, they're 5-year grants, but we have to reapply every year. We're expecting around $100,000 on that one, and we have 2 grants that are in their 5th year. We're expecting again about $100,000 on each of those. So anywhere from $300, they could go up to $450. It just depends how much they award us. And then there's 3 new grants we'll be applying for. It's unknown. Probably $100,000 will be the first year. It's been a handful of years so since we've received a new award. The recent awards have been going through AMHA, and they also partner with Akron Public Schools.
Any increase? Do we anticipate?
I mean, we could apply for them. We're applying for 3 new ones. Whether they're awarded or not, we won't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? A motion for consent and a second. All in favor of consent, please let it be known by saying aye. Opposed? All right, we'll get that on the consent agenda. If there's nothing else to come before us, we will adjourn at 3:17. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. Here's what I want to look at.
Oh, yeah, they're also going to ask you this for me. So this is so people can see how many minutes they got?
Right there.